Welcome, everybody. So excited to have you here. I'm Jeff Goldstein, president of Acupol Precision Research, co-founder of the Insights and Analytics Forum, and global board member of the Alumni Network. We have two exceptional AI events in store for you. AI is rocking the business world, and as P&Gers have been trained since birth, big change is both a threat, but also an opportunity for visionary leadership to leap forward. Rest assured, the race to AI is a marathon, not a sprint. So no one has missed the opportunity to take advantage of AI. A lot of us are in the early stages, and there'll be many waves of progress to catch up on. But it is time to start really engaging and learning and maximizing the opportunity. So I'm going to share my screen for the event today. In today's session, Kristi will focus on some of the fundamentals to give you context on how large language models work, the most visible and sort of explosive new AI technique. And Lauren will present a model for how to lead organizational change to drive AI adoptions. Then I'll tell you about part 2 of our AI series in a minute. So this is our fabulous Insights and Alumni Insights and Analytics Forum team. Anne, Jeff, Marina, Paula, Kristen, Sarah, Jessica, and Smriti all have been terrific in helping to guide these events. And Kristen and Smriti are the event co-chairs for today, and we thank them. There are two features at the bottom of your Zoom screen, chat and Q&A. Please go into chat and say hello to everybody. We'd love to hear who's there and where you're from. I think I've set it up so that everyone can post there. Hi, Christina from Cincinnati. Haven't seen you for a while. And feel free to put your LinkedIn link so that people can connect with you. There's also a Q&A section. So that's where you add your questions for the speakers. The Q&A period is going to be at the end of the session. We're going to go about, 50-ish minutes before we get into Q&A, maybe even up to an hour. And the Q&A may go past that, but we will keep it in the recording if you have to bolt. We're principally going to be looking at the Q&A tab for questions. So don't put questions in the chat unless you have a specific request of, hey, Lauren, will you follow up with me on blank? That will be something we capture from the chat. Our alumni scope for this forum is on the website. Our focus is continuing to connect alumni together, like with your LinkedIn element in the post. It's also to build capabilities and enrichment, career insight, and contribute to the community. The previous webinars we've done have been fantastic, starting with our panel with the 4 people at the bottom, then with Kendra Speed talking about building connections in LinkedIn. She's working at LinkedIn, so she's a great expert on it. And then most recently, Kristi Singh. All of those videos are accessible at the bottom of the Insights and Analytics page. Make sure you sign up for the Insight and Analytics Forum announcements. Right now, you're seeing mostly duplicative announcements versus the global network announcements, but we are sometimes buried in the bottom. And also, we will have more reminders through this forum. And then, if you haven't done so already, quite a few have, but if you haven't done so already, make sure you sign up for part 2 in the series, Advanced AI Insights. This is on May 14th at the same time, 11 Eastern. But these 4 topics are really the avant-garde. Not a lot of people are talking about these, but agentic research models are basically using an AI app, if you will, to run AI experiments or programs for you. Synthetic data has great benefits for filling in missing data and getting extra insight. Digital twins and marketing simulations also. And Yogesh is going to join us for the Q&A at the end, connection willing, and then we'll be terrific from there. So with that, on to our featured speaker, who Kristen's going to tell you about.
Hello, everyone. Excited to see 64 and growing participants joining the first session of our AI webinar series. Smriti and I are excited to be here today and introduce these wonderful women that we were former colleagues with back in the day at P&G. But without further ado, I have a couple minutes here to introduce Kristi. I'm honored to say that this woman is an entrepreneurial at heart and has been since she was a student at Xavier University. She created the first student-led company ever at the university called Flix Corporation. So she started her career after graduation in the corporate world at P&G. We were all surprised to learn that she was there for 6 years. We thought it was a lot longer than that, working in the Gillette business, working in, anyone remember DRA? The retail end of the structure we had back in the day, and also Always as a brand. So she left P&G to follow her entrepreneurial heart. She founded many companies, 3 tech companies, of which 2 she has exited. Many on this call probably have hands-on experience with her Knowledge Hound company that she led and pioneered for over 10 years before it was sold off to YouGov. Since that time, she's had 2 successful exits. I might have already mentioned that. And she has experience in raising more than $5 million in venture funding, and is also on the board of many companies, consulting and leading them today. She has become quite an AI expert. She has now been consulting quite a bit in generative AI, which we're going to learn more about today. And based on her experiences there, she helps clients from big and small to transform their organizations and the way they work using these tools that we're going to learn a little bit about today. And not to forget to mention her hobbies on the side, she founded another company called Dot Technologies, which is an AI assistant company to curate memories and store them in a safe and secure environment from various media technologies. So I'm honored to introduce Kristi today. She's coming to us from the greater Chicago area, where she lives with her husband and 2 adorable little children. So I'll hand it off to you, Kristi.
Thanks, Kristen. I really appreciate the intro. I hope, hopefully you didn't oversell me here, but I'll try to deliver on today's presentation. So it's great to be here. I'm super excited to be doing this with you all. I want to start with a quick survey though, just to get you guys, just to understand kind of who the audience is here. So if you could take 2 seconds, or maybe like 20 seconds, and fill out these 3 questions. Just what's your primary role? So we know kind of like your background and context around that. How do you describe your current use of generative AI in the workforce? And then how well do you think you understand how a large language model works? And no need to, no shame in any of the answers, just kind of I just want to know where you guys are at today so that I can then best tailor the conversation here for what you all need, and that this can be the most productive conversation. So I'll give you a couple moments to fill that out. Feel like we need some like Jeopardy music or something. Jeff, I don't know if you can cue that up on. Thanks.
Now you can see why I'm talking about market research and not singing career.
Yeah, stick to your day job, right? Yeah, it's great.
Okay, we've got 51 people voting so far out of 70. So
Okay,
just give it another minute and then we'll close up.
Okay, and then I'll share the results. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
All right, let's call it a
Okay.
good representative sample.
Great. Okay, so the majority of us can you guys see the results, Jeff?
Put in the
Oh, well,
chat.
you may not know. Okay, so I'll just read them out. But the majority of folks, 36% are in insights. And then majority of you are saying you're using, let's see here, you use it occasionally for work tasks like writing, brainstorming, analysis. Some have experimented with AI tools like ChatGPT, that's 35%. And then about 10% are not using it at all. From a large language model standpoint, people say 44% say they've, in terms of how well they understand it a little bit. They've heard of them, but don't really get the mechanics. So that's great, because what I'm gonna do today is gonna help you guys understand a little bit more about the LLMs and how they work. So about 15% of you who said you know it very well, you might want to take a coffee break at that moment, but it'll only be about 5 minutes. So I have the next 20 minutes here to share with you guys on what's generative AI, how it works, and then how it can be applied. And then I'll hand it off to Lauren. So just real quick, I think this quote has been used and probably overused and actually might be a little old at this point, but your job will be lost to someone who knows AI before it will be lost to AI. That has certainly been true for the past 2 years, and I think that'll be true for the next 2 more years, but probably in 3 years from now, we are gonna be seeing jobs being lost to AI. Not to scare anyone, and I don't think it's necessarily in the market research world, but these things are advancing quite quickly with this. And what's advanced really fast has been this explosion of enterprise-ready AI tools, more of like, we're seeing more seamless integration into workflows, and then also this fluency of AI. And it's just getting better and better daily. And so this is evolving quite rapidly. So very important that we all understand what's going to happen and how it works. And so I think as majority of us are researchers, even marketing folks, we all kind of really in R&D, all of us, we really are used to what's called like what we think of analytic modeling, which is we have an algorithm, and that we have an input, which is data. Then there's a model, which we created as humans. We create that model. So then the output is this new knowledge that we're getting. And we know, though, we created the model, so we know that that output is at a certain stat sig level. So we're really comfortable with that. What's different, though, is that AI is not analytic modeling. And so this is what can make people feel uncomfortable, is that really there's an input, same thing as AI, but the model is what is actually created. The AI is creating the model. And so those neural networks are actually deciding how to process things. And then the output then is something that we go, oh, okay, that's the output. But getting confidence in that output can be really hard for people to get their head wrapped around because they're thinking of it like analytics. So really, this is a huge distinction between the two. I think is a really good way to level set, is that really when we're building analytics, our prior knowledge required is knowledge of like how we want to build the model, whereas the prior knowledge of AI machine learning is the data. And so that model kind of takes its own course here. So it's a different way to look at things and why things can feel uncomfortable for us who are so used to analytics. Generative AI is a subset of AI. I'm not going to walk you through the details of all of this, but it's so hard sometimes it's like, is this generative AI different than AI? Generative AI is a part of the bigger picture of artificial intelligence here. So way back when in 2018, we actually created GPTs. So we meaning Google created the first one. And that's really the technology that's being used today. So it actually has been around for a long time, but it wasn't until we saw OpenAI hit here that people went, oh, I see this. Oh, I get this. And then they open source models, and it went kind of, I would say, viral in the sense of that people could really democratize it and start using it rapidly. So generative AI is this subset of artificial intelligence that involves algorithms and large data sets to generate new content. So the key piece is that it's new here, such as like images, music, voice, text, etc. And so that's what's different. That is what is never been done before. So like machine learning, the difference here is that machine learning, it learned patterns. So just like you were teaching your dog how to fetch, you'd be like, here's the ball, you throw it, he'd bring it back. And you'd only get a treat if he brings it back. And so your dog started to learn, oh, this is a pattern. Whenever I bring the ball back, I get a treat. And he saw that repeat and he goes, oh, this is a pattern. So it's just like Netflix, you experience that where you get a recommendation. Well, they've used machine learning for people who watch certain things. What are other things they watch? It learns pattern and then plays that pattern back to the appropriate people. That's machine learning. The difference then for generative AI is what it's doing is it's learning those patterns. So it's using machine learning to learn the patterns, but it's generating something brand new that didn't already exist in the world. So for example, like now, let's say you teach your dog how to paint and you give him 10 different pictures of paintings. And then you say, okay, now go paint me a picture of an apple. Maybe none of those 10 pictures had an apple in it, but it learned certain patterns and connections between those different patterns enough to go, okay, here's how to paint. Here's how to think about different color formats and brush strokes, and it can produce something brand new. So just like you kind of see like these AI in Snapchat, if any of you use that, or TikTok, you can like take a picture of yourself and then age yourself. That no one knows what you're going to look like in the future, but it's using predictive modeling, using generative AI to create something new, an image that never existed before. I know I'm going really fast. So this is a lot of content crammed into a little amount of time. So I'm going to try to go, I know this is very quick, but essentially I spend all my day consulting on generative AI. So I could fill you with all kinds of knowledge. I'm just giving you the tidbits here. So when you're hearing, so generative AI, we're trying to teach the brain, or we're trying to teach algorithms and these neural networks how to act like the human brain. And so we've got 3 different types of models that act like the different outputs of a human brain. So a human brain produces text, we produce images by like painting, we produce voice output. And so there are different models that then create those different outputs. Large language model is producing text, a diffusion model's creating images, a refusion model's creating voice. And so when someone says LLM or large language model, what they're really talking about is that neural network created to produce text. And so that's what I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about today, is how do you create those neural net, or how does an LLM work? Because I think as long as you know how they work, then you understand how to use it better. And so just like a factory, you've got our raw materials, then those raw materials go through lines and lines and lines of processing before it's output into a bar of soap. Same thing with an LLM. The input layer is the text. So it's like the raw material is the text, and then that text is being processed through deep neural networks. And then the output is text as well, but it's finally coming down to like the final most probable word combination. I'll explain that on the next slide. But that's what's happening inside, is you're putting in text, it's breaking that text down and processing those, and then put it back together as an output. And so the easiest way to think about an LLM is it is the most sophisticated word probability machine you have ever met in your entire life. So what it's doing is it is predicting the next word or the next part of the next word. And it is doing that by, it has learned mostly the English language and the relationship between words in the English language and how it all breaks down. And so what it's doing is, so if, let's say I typed in a command and said, write me a poem about, or a short story about going to see animals. Now, I've just said, I've given it, is pretty vague, but let's say it starts off, and so it says, although it rained, Jojo decided to still go to the blank. It's going to fill in the most probable word. It has way more than Park Zoo concert as the next probable word. It probably has 10,000 options for next probable word, but it's understanding, okay, the clue I gave it was go see animals. And so this next word is going to be mostly linked probably with animals. So it's probably going to pick zoo because it's going, oh yeah, like that's the most probable output. However, I actually was thinking in my head, I want to go to the park and look at animals, but it doesn't know that because it is all it's doing. And I'm not trying to downplay it, but really what it's doing is guessing the next word based on a word probability. And it understands the relationship between words, so it can emulate reasoning because it understands the relationship between words. All right, I know I'm going really fast here. And so what can be confusing sometimes is that in the vernacular of the ecosystem, there are engines, companies, and consumer products. And so the engines are you can think of them as just like the V8 engine in a BMW. You've got these different models. So you have the model number, like GPT-4o is a model number. You can think of it as the engine model number. And then the company that made it, which is OpenAI, but their consumer product is ChatGPT. So when you hear someone go like, oh yeah, have you tried Claude? Well, what they're referring to is a product that Anthropic made, and there could be there's a number of different models that Claude has that you can use. Their most current one is Sonnet 3.7 as of last week. Maybe they released a new one this week, but it's hard to keep up with these guys. So as you start to hear that vernacular, that's what we mean. So very broad. I don't have time to go into like all the kinds of trainings I do on prompting for insights and all of that, but just if you guys were to take away one thing about the best way to prompt a tool is talk to it like it's your intern. Like really, like an intern doesn't know your business yet. They don't know how you want things formatted. They don't know how things are written in the organization. So talk to it like it's your intern. Give it business context. Give it feedback. Give it very prescriptive direction to get the output you want. So we all know, okay, LLMs, what we've heard, I think the biggest complaint from folks is like, oh, I used it once and it was wrong. Yes, hallucinations happen because exactly what I just told you is that it's a word probability machine. The more context you can give it, just like an intern, the more context you can give it, the most probable likelihood it's going to have with getting the output that you want. It's not that the algorithm's broken, that this hallucination happened. It has no idea if it's right or wrong. It just gave you the most probable word sequencing that it knows with the context that it has. Obviously, there's bias to data. So in these general LLMs, it is trained on most of the US language. So Reddit is one of the largest training sets of OpenAI, for example. And so it is all about, if there's nothing in there about I'm going to make this up, but the indigenous people of South Africa, if there's nothing in there on that training set, it's never going to think of that as a word the next word probability in a sentence. And so it is absolutely biased on its data set. There are some security and privacy concerns, but you can get around those mostly in terms of doing your own solutions. And then obviously like ethics and IP is a big issue here. I could talk to you an hour about all these topics. So there are watch outs here, but most of these companies are being able to overcome and get through to really implement the most impactful LLM deliverable inside their organization. I'm gonna skip this because I've only got 5 minutes left. Okay, what does this mean and how is it being applied? So in insights mostly, and marketing, and R&D, sorry, I'm like thinking of all the things here as I'm going. For really all of you, here's some major ways it's being applied. So there's a huge opportunity here for qual and sentiment analysis. This is getting, if you used a tool 2 years ago, it is miles better than it even was 2 years ago. It can understand so well today as to like context and coding open ends. Ideation, it's great at ideation and being a partner in ideation. Email and report writing, I'm seeing this. So my clients are a lot of, they're both market research suppliers and corporations. I'm training them on how to use generative AI in their organizations. And probably one of the most low-hanging fruit is report writing, and helping them with that. It can do data analysis. It's really great sidekick for people who are coding, especially, you know, if you're even in Excel. Like I've used it a ton for just doing Excel formulas. Survey development, I just used it yesterday to do a survey. It was great. And then even data visualization, it's getting better and better at. And so these are kind of like the practical ways people are using and where I'm having my clients starting to implement new tools or experiment within their organizations. So a large language model, what I'm finding with my clients is that the generic ones are great for a lot of things. However, how actionable is that when you've got a specific mandate in your company or you've got specific things going on that need to be private and you want your own authentic tone of voice. So here's kind of some ways to kind of put LLMs more in action is training an LLM on your data can be extremely powerful because it can start to understand the patterns in how you write and how you communicate and how your company does and apply that then to its output. Teaching it your workflows has been amazingly powerful for folks because you can start to say like, I'm spending a ton of time doing, you know, coding open ends or drafting a survey, whereas this could get you your draft pretty like within 3 seconds. And now you have something to work from. And then also embedding AI in your operations and offerings. So what I'm seeing with my clients is kind of like the low-hanging fruit is really how to operationalize whether that you're an insights function and at a Fortune 1000 company and you're like, okay, we are spending too much time on doing surveys. How do I speed that up? Or you're the market research supplier where you're like, we are spending a ton of time drafting discussion guides. Then also another element is this offering. What product can you actually offer someone? I'd say that's really for the most sophisticated people who are using it. Lower hanging fruit is on operations today. Short term, it'll be your competitive advantage. Long term, this will become table stakes, especially for the market research suppliers. Having AI tools to run their operations is going to be table stakes. And my last slide here before I hand it off to Lauren is just a case study for you guys, or Smriti to introduce Lauren, as I have a case study to share with you guys. So, you know, it seems intimidating to be like, okay, well, if I need, how do I create a custom GPT? So here's the thing that I'm seeing with my clients is that the market research suppliers, they need a way to increase their EBITDA without adding headcount. So the only way to add EBITDA is, you know, let's say they've got 3 people who can manage $1 million in revenue. The only way to add more EBITDA is to add more headcount. But with generative AI, now you can have 3 people managing 1.5 million in revenue or 2 million in revenue because you're getting amazing operational efficiencies in those people's time. Or you're getting so much operational efficiencies, you also can have them spend way more time on working on strategy than you can on some of the more of like the tasks at hand. So the barrier for this, though, has been that standard GPT offerings, so like OpenAI, you can create your own GPT in. The problem is security. So how do you make sure that it's secure? A lot of people work with, whether you're on a brand or in a market research supplier, your security has to be number one. So how do you reach that security? Second is customization. A big concern I've heard is like people are like, we have a very specific tone of voice that we write in at this brand or at this agency. How do I make sure that's captured? And that's really about training the LLM with your data. So it knows the most probable word, it understands your tone. So the solution to this has been custom LLMs or GPTs. You would think that sounds like super expensive, it's going to cost $100,000. It's a fraction of that. You now can, I've been working with a number of clients to create custom GPTs where we can check the box on security, train it on their data to then create for everything from like proposals to RFP responses, discussion guides, screeners, surveys, report writing, like all synthesis, all of the things that they are working on. And these are just, and this is really drafting. Like, as I said, like it can hallucinate. This isn't to take people's jobs. This is all about how do you get a good draft that so then you can just use way more time applying your strategy brain and leveling up. So with that, I think, okay, 1 minute late. Sorry, Jeff. I'm going to hand it over to Smearty. I know I just threw a ton at you. We have a Q&A section coming up, and then also I can post my contact information in the chat. But that is my quick 101 on LLMs and how we can apply it today.
All right, thanks so much, Kristi. So hi, everyone. My name is Smearty Sheth, and I'm one of the part of the forum team and one of the event co-chairs with Kristen. And it's truly an honor to introduce Lauren. I actually had the pleasure of working with Lauren on the Olay brand at P&G and CMK. We have such amazing memories together from back in the day. And it's really incredible to see how she's continued to grow. And now she's thriving as an entrepreneur and trailblazer in the AI space. She is the founder of Wonder Consulting, an AI-focused consultancy dedicated to empowering leaders to thrive in the AI-driven future. As a proud Procter & Gamble alum with nearly 2 decades of experience, she blends her extensive expertise in consumer insights, brand strategy, and sales leadership with industry-leading AI insights to leverage the power of AI to accelerate the business. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren to walk you through her work. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you see my screen okay, Smearty?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Smearty, for the kind introduction. Okay, so maybe this sounds like you. You know that AI is going to disrupt your industry. And when it comes to AI, you've started to experiment, but you really have yet to see the real ROI or value transformation driven by AI across your organization. Let me provide you with a little bit of comfort. If this is you, you are not alone. Very few organizations today are unlocking significant value from AI. And today I'm going to share with you a structured framework for how you can move from what I call random acts of AI to true integration into business processes to drive transformation in both top line and bottom line. And this framework I'm going to share with you is applicable across a broad organization. But today I'm going to challenge you to think about how you can apply this framework to drive AI transformation across your individual organization, whether you're leading an insights organization, a specific team, or a brand. Insights and analytical leaders are in a unique position to lead in these efforts, and I encourage you to take a leadership role. So as Smearty mentioned, I'm Lauren Schiavone. I'm really excited to be here with you. Until this past 1.5 years, I spent my entire professional career at Procter & Gamble. So for over 16 years, I worked across insights, marketing, and sales. I left P&G a 1.5 years ago for very personal reasons. I have 2 young children, and I simply wanted a more flexible career. After I left P&G, I finally had a moment to lift my head up again and see the broader business landscape. And that's when I realized AI is going to transform absolutely everything, not just the way we work, but the way that we live our lives. And I just became really interested and passionate in upskilling myself. And a couple months into my AI upskilling journey, I had this massive aha moment. And I thought to myself, if I knew then when I was at P&G what I know now, I would have been able to spend more time working on more strategic work that energized me. And I probably would have had more time to do the things that I love, like spending time with my family. So it was that insight that led me to found Wonder Consulting, an AI forward consultancy that's really designed to empower non-technical leaders like you and I to thrive in an AI-driven future. Today, we see that only 5% of organizations are actually providing their employees with training and upskilling needed to learn and apply AI. So a big focus of the work that I do today is related to AI upskilling and training. So this framework I'm going to share with you consists of 5 strategic phases that are designed to guide you through AI transformation. So we start with assess, where we understand the current state of AI and evaluate AI readiness within your organization. Then we move to establish, where we set AI goals and priorities that align with your vision for growth. Next is experiment. We focus on AI piloting and iteration, allowing you to test, learn, and refine. From there, we accelerate scaling AI and driving adoption across the organization and embedding it into everyday workflows and processes. And finally, adapt. We want to future-proof both your business and your organization, ensuring that you are ready as AI continues to rapidly accelerate. But before I dive into the framework, I think it's really important that we have the right mindset about AI. Too often, AI is viewed simply as a productivity tool. And let me be clear, it can be an incredible productivity tool. But to truly harness its potential, we need to think bigger. And if applied strategically, AI can become much more than just a productivity booster. It can be a powerful growth engine for your business, and I would encourage you to think about it that way. So let's go to phase 1, assess. So this is going to be your foundation for success. You're going to take a comprehensive look at 5 key areas. First, assess your organization's AI literacy. Where does your team really stand in understanding and their capabilities of AI? Also, take a look at your leadership. Understand what are their perspectives, their commitment levels, their potential concerns around AI. That's going to be very important to understand to drive the change that you need to. You also want to do a technology audit. Assess the tools you're using today. You will probably be surprised to learn that there's a lot of AI capabilities that are being integrated into the tools you're using every day. Do you know what they are? Are you using them? Do you understand what are the technology roadmaps that these partners have? Some of you serve clients, and if you serve clients, don't forget about them in this step. They're going to be essential stakeholders in this journey. What's their level of AI awareness? Are they open to experimentation? And do they have existing AI policies that you should be aware of? And then finally, start to consider how your roles or your services are going to be impacted by AI, which will be most effective, in what ways. This foresight is going to allow you to be proactive rather than reactive in your planning. So this assessment phase is all about getting a clear, honest picture of where you stand today so you can develop the most effective path forward. And to help guide your assessment, I have developed a scorecard. Of course, us P&Gers love a scorecard. And what I always say about the scorecard is the final score does not matter. I do not care. It's the conversations and the insights that the scorecard will spark within your organization that's going to be really valuable. And if you'd like a copy of the scorecard, I'd be happy to share it. Feel free to reach out. The next phase is established. So after understanding your current state, the next step is to establish an AI council, which is a group responsible for driving AI transformation. With an AI council, you want to be sure to secure an executive sponsor, someone who can champion your work and break down barriers. Taking on AI transformation across an entire enterprise can feel really overwhelming, and that's okay. You can start by building an AI council within your own team, your function, or a specific area of the organization. Councils do not have to be big to make a significant impact. With your council, you want to define clear goals and KPIs. You want to think about AI policies, right? Developing these policies early will guide ethical AI use and set important boundaries. The council is also going to identify pilot projects, We'll discuss that more in the next couple slides. And then finally, the council should begin to assess what is the right AI literacy plan for this organization. As you are getting started, let me share a tip with you. If you are unsure about your first steps in creating an AI council, you're working with limited resources, or you're already juggling a full plate, which I'm sure that you are, use ChatGPT or your preferred LLM as a mentor and advisor. Tell it what you're doing, such as building an AI council, and ask it to act as your mentor or your advisor and to guide you step by step. Now, it's possible there were a couple of you that were more advanced in your AI usage. It's possible your organization may already have an AI council. But as I have talked to clients, many of these councils have lost momentum or they are not getting much done. If this describes your council, let's talk about it. We can assess the health of your AI council. So let's talk about identifying pilots. Sometimes the hardest part is knowing where to start. So here's an exercise that can help. Begin by brainstorming all the tasks you do in your role. Think about the tasks you do for yourself, your team, your clients, consumers, managing up your organization. And be thorough in this exercise. And once you have a comprehensive list, group these tasks into key areas. Now that you have your tasks organized, the next step is to prioritize them for AI pilots. And a helpful approach is to map these tasks based on 2 factors. So first, consider how much you dislike doing the tasks. These are often repetitive, time-consuming activities that drain your energy. Then, evaluate the potential impact. And you can define what impact means to you. Maybe it's time saved, maybe it's business growth, or improved accuracy, or simply freeing up the mental space and energy. You're going to want to map your tasks across these 2 dimensions, and the ones that land in the upper right-hand quadrant of high dislike, high impact are often ideal candidates for early pilots. Now, securing buy-in for AI pilots can sometimes be challenging. Maybe some of you have faced this, especially when leaders view this as a distraction to critical business priorities. So a powerful way to overcome this is to frame your pilot as a solution to pressing business challenges the organization is already facing. To identify AI-driven solutions, you can try this approach with ChatGPT or another LLM. Start by asking it to act as an expert in your field, describe the business problem, and have it break down the challenge into specific steps. Then explore how AI might be able to be applied at each step. The next phase is experiment. To experiment well requires disciplined experimenting. And as insights and analytics leaders, you guys already know this, but here are a couple tips for successful AI pilots. First, define success. Start by setting clear metrics. What does a successful pilot look like? Define the outcomes you are aiming for. Also, be sure to capture a benchmark or a before state so you have something to compare it to and calculate the ROI in the after state. You also want to secure a leadership sponsor. Having a senior leader in your corner is very important. This sponsor not only champions your pilot, but should also be the right person for a go, no-go decision after the end of this pilot. Really make sure you're prioritizing progress over perfection. The goal is to learn and adapt quickly, not to have something that's flawless. Make meaningful progress with simply an MVP and move quickly. In the spirit of moving quickly, you should aim to have your pilot up within 30 days. This urgency helps prevent overthinking or overcomplicating the process. And finally, plan for a 90-day test period. This is typically long enough to gather meaningful insights while maintaining productive momentum. Okay, now phase 4, accelerate. So now that you've validated your pilots, the next step is to accelerate and scale what's working across the organization. First, expand your successful pilots. Take what's working and systemically roll it out to other teams and areas of the business. It's helpful if you create templates or playbooks that make adoption easier. Next, you want to develop a comprehensive AI action plan or roadmap. Outline your future sets of experiments along with timelines, necessary resources. This approach provides a clear path for continued experimentation and scaling. Keep in mind, though, this plan should be flexible. Next, focus on integration. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have to move from random acts of AI to true integration into business processes and daily operations. Outline what those are within your organization. The goal is to make AI an embedded component of how work gets done. And to drive adoption amongst your organization, embedding it into AI workflows is going to be critical. Next, invest in broad upskilling. When AI becomes embedded into key processes and daily operations, as we just discussed, that's the perfect moment for additional practical AI training. And finally, establish feedback loops. As AI adoption grows, feedback becomes even more valuable. Regularly check in with teams and your clients to understand what's working and where adjustments might be needed. And then the final phase, adapt. So this final phase is about staying ready for what's next as AI rapidly evolves. And what I always say here is do not wait until the other phases are perfect before you start thinking about this phase. Adapting to an AI-driven future is going to require a shift in how we organize our organizations, how we create our service offerings, and how we cultivate our culture. So first, develop an AI-forward organizational design. If you are doing any organizational design and not thinking about AI, stop, please stop. As AI transforms roles and functions, it's very important to evolve your organizational structure to support these changes. Consider how roles, team structures, and workflows need to adapt as AI continues to advance. Second, you need to start thinking about the future of your service offerings. As AI advances, it is going to disrupt your current service offerings and your revenue streams. And now is the time to assess these impacts and proactively consider how to enhance your existing services or develop new ones. And then finally, lead intentional change management. And remember that successful change management or transformation really boils down to just clear communication, intentional culture building, and accountability throughout your organization. I want to dive for a moment just into culture, specifically how the qualities that drive success in an AI-driven future might differ from the cultural norms in your organization, and how important it is to make sure that these values become new values within your organization. We have to start by letting go of ego. The pace of AI advancements means that no one person can be a true expert at anything. You've got to let go of ego and the traditional expectation that leaders must have all the answers. Instead, you want to embrace curiosity. We must also shift from competition to collaboration. Teams are going to need to openly share their discoveries, learnings, and insights. That's what's going to build a strong organization in the future. We must also actively challenge the status quo. What got us here will not sustain us. And the organizations that thrive will be the ones that act bravely to question everything, your assumptions, your processes, and be willing to reinvent what's working today to prepare for tomorrow. And then you also are going to need to make continuous learning a priority. You need to embed it into the way you work. You need to expect it, reward it, and allow for those opportunities for your employees. And then finally, and arguably what I think is most important, is adopting what I call an AI first mindset. This means anytime you're working on anything, you think to yourself, how can AI help me? And the great part is, if you don't know, you can just ask AI. What I always say in this change and transformation is the hardest part about adopting AI is actually not learning the technology. It's adopting the habit change. And we all know from working with consumers, habit change is really hard. As an idea, stick a Post-it on your computer that says, how can AI help with this, to act as a trigger for you to remember to use AI throughout your day. So here's a view of the full framework. Use this framework as your guide, but remember, of course, your path will be unique and it might not be linear, and that is perfectly okay. Thanks so much for having me. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. You're also welcome to send me an email. I do have a weekly newsletter on Mondays focused on tips and tricks for busy leaders. And also, if you'd like to hear more about this type of content I talked about today, I did recently record a podcast. So that's the bottom QR code that you see there. And now I'll turn it back to Kristen to introduce Yogesh.
Thank you, Lauren. That was inspiring and insightful. I have a lot of questions, as do many others, which we'll touch on in just a second. But I thought I'd introduce Yogesh. If he can come on screen with me here, Yogesh, hello, who is going to join us for the Q&A session, and will be leading our second part of the webinar in terms of advances in AI. Yogesh is a dear friend of mine. He's been a 25-year plus marketing executive with pivotal roles, obviously at P&G, but also at Spotify, Pinterest, Kimberly-Clark, Amway, and of course, many, many years at P&G across 6 different countries. So he's quite global, quite experienced, and really become quite the AI expert. In addition to his consulting business, which he started, Y2S Consulting, years ago, he had a passion for empowering and facilitating brands on the impact of stigmas and the application of AI. And some of his former clients have included Apple, Whirlpool, 3M, Lowe's, Foster Grant, and Mars, just to name a few. But consulting isn't all that Yogesh is doing. He's adding his expertise in brightening minds of the future at the University of South Carolina, his alma mater, where he is the director of the Center for Marketing Excellence, and is also a lecturer on key applications of insights, AI in marketing, as well as marketing strategy and planning. He has a regular podcast and newsletter, so many of you probably have joined or have seen many of his podcasts, called The New Frontier in Insights, as he's continuing to lead the path and pave the way in the AI world. He resides in also the Chicagoland and has one son who's about to graduate and go on to the college world in Washington, D.C. So without further ado, Yogesh, if you want to just say a few words about your next section, and then we'll kick off the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And what a great job Lauren and Kristi did just in the last hour. So thank you guys for really simplifying, the whole conversation around AI and, insights as well as, marketing overall. My session that's coming up in May is going to take it to the next level. So, Kristi talked about custom GPT agents and Lauren talked about adoption. I'm going to talk about what's actually on the horizon in a way. I say it's on the horizon for a lot of us, but it's actually here already. So there are like really 4 key topics that I'm going to touch on. The first one's going to be around synthetic data. So we're all accustomed to talking about human intelligence data, but there's also artificially generated data, and it comes with a lot of pros and cons with that. So I'm going to touch on that specifically from an insight and analytics perspective. The other 3 areas are going to be dependent actually on human intelligence as well as synthetic data. One is the development of digital twins, which basically means you can make your own replica of yourself. I can act like you, talk like you, behave like you, and I'll show some examples of that, and I can also show how you can create your own digital twin. And then from an application perspective, there are 2 big areas. One is called market simulations, and the other one, which is called agentic models, which takes the whole concept of doing one-off tasks and connecting it and making it into an actual workflow, which actually redefine how we work. So Kristi mentioned it, Lauren mentioned it, in terms of becoming almost AI native. I'll touch upon that in the next webinar. So that's what's coming up in May.
Excellent. Thank you, Yogesh. You guys can hear me again, right? Awesome. All right. So please, if anyone has any questions, I know I have quite a few. If I can just fill out the half hour myself, but there are a few questions that have been asked in the Q&A section. Yogesh, thank you for chiming in. I'd ask you to repeat some of your answers so everyone can hear and we get it on the recording. So please feel free to type, or if you want to go on mic and ask, whichever you prefer. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the first question, if everyone's okay with that. Kristi, Lauren, fantastic. I'm just I'm just in awe of what you guys have put together, the organization, and what you've learned so far. But basic 101, how do you know what tools to go to and to use? And are they free? Do they cost money? How do you even begin to play around and experiment?
Yeah, Lauren, do you want to
Go
take
ahead.
that?
Go ahead.
Okay,
you want me
I'm guessing we probably have a similar answer, but maybe not. Also, Lauren's framework is really brilliant. I love it. So I think like my assessment of the market right now is that we are getting exactly what we shouldn't be doing, which is we are trained as insights professionals, as marketers, to take a problem and take the problem statement and then find a technology to apply to it. The reason to believe goes to the benefit or like the problem statement. And right now it seems like what's happening in the marketplace is we're like shoving down everyone's throat. Like, here's a tool, use it. And they're like, what problem am I solving with this? And so we just need to drink our own Kool-Aid here and go, okay, what's the job to be done? It's the job to be done framework. So find out the job to be done. A lot of times though, we're not even thinking about the job to be done, meaning like, this is the process I've always had. We don't, and it's fine. It's like not a pain point. Like we're just like, oh yeah, it takes me, 8 hours to do that, but that's what it is. And instead of thinking, okay, it takes me 8 hours to do that, could actually I shorten that amount of time, then go, okay, what's the job to be done, and find the right tool to do that. A lot of them are free. And then there's also then there's a lot of them that are also paid. So I think it's always like start with the job to be done. And then finding the tool for that. And I do a ton of Googling on this stuff. I use ChatGPT, Gemini a lot to like search what other tools are out there. It's pretty overwhelming in my opinion, how many tools are out there, Lauren. I don't know how you like weed through it. It's like, this is my full-time job, is consulting on generative AI, but I get like, I get an email every day and of like a new tool, and it's just so overwhelming. Yogesh, same thing. Sorry, I should, so I'll kick it over to Lauren maybe, and Yogesh.
Yeah.
Right,
No, I think you make a great point on the job to be done. But I'll simplify it a little bit because I think the world of AI is very overwhelming. And like, in fact, like Kristi and Yogesh and I probably get overwhelmed also. Like, it's so normal. So what I always tell people is do not get distracted by the shiny object. Focus on mastering an LLM or a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini, Claude, pick your favorite, okay? When you combine your own experience and expertise, a very important part of the equation, plus the capabilities of a tool like ChatGPT, that alone will give you superpowers. And a tool like ChatGPT can do most of the AI use cases. So a tool like ChatGPT is usually my default go-to, and there are very few use cases where I find myself needing to reach for a different tool. And so that's what I would encourage each of you to do walking out of today. If you can just master a tool like ChatGPT, or for you, that's Gemini, if you're a Google Workspace business, or maybe that's Claude for you, great. Stay focused, master that. You will get the 80 for the 20, I think.
Is that true also for the customization that Kristi talked about? Creating your own customize, is that also free in those tools?
So I think within reason. I think Chris, like if I'm an organization and I have like, and Kristi, why don't you answer this question? I want to answer it for you.
Yeah. It's so, gosh, what's embarrassing is I've been on the paid version of OpenAI for 2 years. So I don't even know what's in the non-paid version, but you can create your own GPT in OpenAI. I don't know if you have to pay the $20 a month or not. You don't have to, Yogesh?
No, you don't.
Okay.
You can do that, but you have to remember that anything you do on the free version, the prompts as well as the output get used by OpenAI in their training model. When you're paying the subscription, then you can actually toggle a button that allows you to keep your stuff private, and it doesn't go back into the training model. So that's the big difference right now. The other thing is that you're limited to the number of prompts in the free model. You're not limited on the paid version.
And yes, and also I think you're limited to the amount of content you can upload to train or like to get context. So
that's right. Yeah.
So like creating a GPT, you can do that. with the security settings on, if you're paid, the hardest part, I think, right now is that organizations, they've got a lot, they want to give access then to that GPT to like 20 people. And that's really cumbersome to do in ChatGPT. You're also then, if you do that in ChatGPT, you're keeping your fingers crossed that everyone kept the security setting on. And that's just like too risky for companies who are working with my brand clients. They've got a lot of obviously like high security data. And then also even with for my market research suppliers, they're working with like Eli Lilly and like these big financial banks, like financial institutions. They like it's so in that case, what I do is I work with them and we work with a software provider where they can use low code and no code tech to create a custom GPT for, you know, like we're talking like a 5-figure type, very approachable for a company doing, you know, 5 million or more in revenue, type of expense.
But
Can I
there's
just,
Yeah, that was,
can I,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Yogesh.
sorry, so to your point, you know, ChatGPT offers what's called custom GPT agents. Copilot has something called agents. I think Claude has, I think it's called projects, if I'm not mistaken. So they all offer it right now. The only thing is that, especially if you're working in an organization that is offering you access to any of these LLMs, the company is deciding whether you have access to these custom agents or not. So, you know, so you have to check with your company to see if that is being offered. A lot of companies are not giving that option, even in the enterprise solution. So it just depends on the company. The other pathway the companies are also taking is they're building their own internal LLMs, right? So if that is happening, actually that's a good thing for the company, because especially as an insights professional, you don't have to then keep on reprompting on specific tasks that you want to do because it's already using your data sets in there. Even with that, the company may have some protocols around what you can and cannot upload. So just make sure you're clear on what those requirements are in your organization.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. There was a question in the Q&A about going a little bit more into the security that you guys are talking about. You know, when you prompt ChatGPT and share personal or company information that is pretty regulated, and how is it protected in this process? Like, I mean, how do you work with IT to check on that? Who do you talk to with Lauren's process to make sure that it's appropriate?
Well, I think there's a couple ways. One is that if you're using Copilot, they have subscribed to the security component of it. Most companies now have a generative AI policy. Most larger ones, I should say, have a generative AI policy that you can read and get up to speed on. But if you're using Copilot, you've already got kind of like that security wrapper as a piece of it. In OpenAI, there is a toggle that you have to put on which is temporary chat, and that is them saying, "Hey, we're not using this to train the LLM."
Is that what you were talking about earlier, Yogesh? No?
No, there's another toggle switch you can also use on the paid version. I think it's in the settings area, if I'm not mistaken, where you can say, you know, to whether you want to keep your things private or not. If you are working as a consultant, you know, like I do consulting projects, you know, using some of the custom GPT agents I've built, I always ask my clients to give me written permission to use any of their data, whether it's proprietary or even if it's general data. So that way, basically, you are protecting yourself and you're protecting that company as well in case if something were to happen. So, you know, you need to put into your master services agreement, you know, language that, you know, that's where you're seeking permission on whether or not they're giving you the permission to use that data or not.
That's great advice. Great advice. Awesome. All right, I have another question here from Lori Arnold. She's, you know, you shared a lot of information that you can put into the model. Like I think Kristi, you said an entire book, you know, whatever, so it can learn your writing style and the way that you like to speak. What models allow for this, and how do you go about training these models? do you assume that it's updating itself, or how does it maintain what you've taught it? Is there an expiration date, or does it just keep building?
As Lauren, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I was just going to say, so most of the big LLMs, so the ChatGPTs, the Claude, the Geminis, they're all going to have a memory. In fact, the memory is getting better every day. Last week, ChatGPT just announced more improvements to memory. And so like for me, you know, I spend a lot of time in ChatGPT. It knows my tone of voice, right? Like, or you can start by just sharing content with it, content you've written, or, you know, share your content and say, do a tone of voice analysis. Like, how does Lauren Schiavone speak? What are things that are important to me? What type of content do I write about? So spend time just sharing materials you've written before, and then, you know, just start to like quiz it. Okay, how do I speak? What's my tone? What are things I talk about? What are things I don't talk about? And then you can also, I think, Kristi, you were just pulling up ChatGPT if that was you, but you can see the memory that it keeps on you in the settings, or you can just say like, what do you know about me? Like, that's a great exercise for everyone on this call to go do, like, just to understand what do you know about me? Do a personality assessment. Like, tell me, what is my tone of voice? So like, the key, honestly, is just to use it, right? Like to just do things with it. And then it honestly, magically will start to learn more about you than maybe you even know about yourself. Ask it to do a performance review on you, right? Then it'll really like start to blow your mind. Right? Strengths, opportunities. So yeah, my piece of advice is like, just get into it, start using it. The more you can use it, the more it will get to know you, your style, things you care about, etc.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Anything else you want to build on that, you guys?
I love what you said about, doing a performance review. I've started saying actually in presentations that ChatGPT has now become my work wife because it knows me so well and it knows what I'm thinking, so that when I'm asking it, it has this, I want to call it almost like this flirty banter with me now, you know? So you can actually have ChatGPT, you can set it up in a way where you can actually have any kind of relationship you want with it, like, whether it's formal or whether it's informal, or whether it's flirty or not. So, I treat it as my work wife now. Simply put.
That's great. That's awesome. Guys, this is all very impressive. Since, as you mentioned, this is still very new, right? 5 years, 2020, when it all kind of exploded. How did you guys really feel? Where did you go to learn and grow and feel more comfortable, where you felt qualified to start running a consulting business on this? What certification programs do you recommend? What have you seen out there as a good place to start learning and growing? Anything that you can assist insight professionals just to get dabbling into this space. And I think, Lauren, you've said it yourself, just get in there, play, just figure it out. But, are there anything from a, academia world, Yogesh, that you've seen that's been working well with some of your classes, things like that? I know you do a lot of live experiments.
Yeah. So there are three places that I think, you can go to or do stuff, right? Number one is self-experimentation. I don't want to speak on behalf of Lauren and Kristi, but I've been talking with them about this for over 12 to 18 months now. And correct me if I'm wrong, but all of you are self-taught in a way, isn't it? You've been experimenting, you've been trying, and we learn from each other. That's one thing that all of us are doing. For me personally, I wasn't on TikTok until last summer, but you'd be amazed at how many creators are out there on TikTok that are talking about AI and use cases for AI. So I started following them, and through them, I actually started finding newsletters. I'm subscribed to maybe like 15 different newsletters now. I can't keep up with it every single newsletter every single day. It's just overwhelming. But every time I review them, I always pick up something new, which makes me say, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's pretty cool. Let me go try it," kind of thing. So that's another way where you can just use social media to help you find people who are out there talking about this stuff. And then the third thing is our conferences, right? There are all these insights conferences that are happening. I'm actually traveling today to DC for the IIEX conference. where I would say 70 to 80% of the topics are going to be AI related in some form, shape, or fashion. So, get to these conferences. For me personally, I speak at these conferences fairly frequently. That's forcing me to learn the topic before I actually go and talk about the topic. So, what better way than to put self pressure on yourself in learning, right? So I completely self-taught myself on synthetic data last year. I'm completely self-taught now on agentic models this year. But it's having that external pressure on me that works for me personally. Things whatever works for you, do that. But that's kind of like the three areas I would say are the best ways to start learning. Are there college courses? Yes, a lot of universities are starting to offer that now. Northwestern, Stanford, even I wouldn't be surprised if your local community college is offering something now as well. So that's happening. Do you have to go through the formal process? Entirely up to you whether you can afford it or not. But there's a lot of content out there that you can actually be using online. So
I think there's free ones on LinkedIn and places like that as well. Are there any specific resources that you guys go to regularly that you tap into that you see as credible?
Yeah, I have two additional. I'll throw the podcast in the chat that I listen to regularly every week that I love. But the thing I was going to add to what Yogesh was saying is there's definitely courses. And I did actually take a couple when I started down this road. But what I have found to be most helpful or would encourage each of you to do is find the AI thought leaders in your industry. So if it's insights, it's great people like Yogesh and Kristi, right? And other great people like that. Follow them on LinkedIn. You guys, the amount of content that is being shared and created just on LinkedIn alone blows my mind every day, because when I was at P&G, I would never use LinkedIn to learn anything. I probably never spent any time on it. But one of the things I just started doing, and I continue to do every day, is I just started following a lot of thought leaders in AI. And when there's a new update, they're always talking about it, providing examples. So find who the thought leaders are in the area of AI that you care about, because that's what's going to be most helpful than taking a generic course. And those thought leaders in the area that you're most interested probably have their own courses, and probably those courses are going to be much more helpful, I think, than the ones from the big universities, because they're just much more customized to what you exactly care about. But I gave up social media. I told myself I would only look at LinkedIn when I was scrolling, and it actually has made a big difference in how much I've learned about AI.
Awesome. That's awesome. Awesome. I think, Yogesh, you're going to cover more on synthetic data next session. So, Helen,
yeah.
I'm going to suggest that we cover that in session 2. How creating AI agents? Do you guys have experience with creating the AI agents that you mentioned?
Yes. Any specific question? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we've
No,
all
just
built them.
it's just a question about creating AI agents. Any watch outs, I guess,
Yeah.
or tips?
Yep. So I think so agents, so I think there's so the difference between an agent and just a customizing an LLM is that when you're customizing an LLM, you're feeding it your information and you're training it on your data set and how you talk and all the knowledge that you have. Then there is an agent. An agent is actually a generative AI application that does something for you. And so these agents you can create if you've got a workflow that you really want to be streamlined, you can create these agents. And there are tools out there that you now can use to create an agent. So for example, one that I've used is called Gumloop. And you can essentially if you've got a 3-step process of doing let's see, some data analysis, and you have to take data from one Excel file, format in a certain way, then put it into HubSpot, then export it and format it into a different form. You can create a workflow, and you essentially are creating 3 different agents that are doing a task for you and linking it together in an entire workflow. And that's like that's a tool that's like super affordable, super easy to do. But more and more the world is going toward agents. Those of us on the call are likely more to use a tool that is an agent versus like creating our own agents. But absolutely can be done, and people are doing it.
That's great. Kristi, I think it was your presentation, you talked about how AI can generate text, images, voice. What about video?
Yes. Oh yeah. It's like, so you can now create a movie with generative AI. And it's, now you kind of look at it and you're like, oh, okay, but it's, it'll be creating movies in the next 5 years. And so there'll be a lot. It's pretty amazing, actually, the scenes that it can create, its understanding of spatial text or images. And so yes, it can create videos. You can also you can create like a demo video. If you're trying to do marketing for yourself or for your company, you can create marketing videos really easy that have a mix between someone that looks like they're talking in a script to the camera, to scenes, to stills with voiceover, like the full gamut. So yes, video is certainly at play in this.
Excellent. Excellent.
Actually, if I may quickly add, if you don't mind, you can also
Please.
develop persona videos. I've done that for clients. I had a client who actually asked me to create an ad that they wanted to use with their customers, their retail customers, for a new product launch. So I used text to video to create their ad for them, if you want to call it, or their introductory, video for their new product launch. And they use it for their customers, and they also use it in their national sales meeting. I just did that actually a couple of months ago for a client. So yeah, the quality is actually amazing in terms of what you can do.
All right, we got a good question here from Miguel. I'm gonna put this out here to answer live. So I guess there was an article in the Financial Times yesterday, I don't know if you three saw it, about strategy being used by companies and brands to feed lots of paid info. So the AI platforms will be more informed to show their services and their brands, right? It's kind of like taking advantage of the system to get their name and more than others who are asking for just search, right? How do you avoid this kind of bias, or how can brands take advantage of this?
I'll start and then feel free to chime in, guys. So let's take a step back, okay? So what we see is that the consumer path to purchase is evolving, right? And there's new ways for consumers to search and discover. So we're seeing a lot of search moving from Google to tools like ChatGPT. So when maybe I went in the past to Google to learn about what diapers I should select for my newborn, now maybe I go to ChatGPT, right? And so we are moving from a world that was SEO or search engine optimized to, everyone calls it something different, but answer engine optimized, or AEO or AIO. And so it's going to be important for brands and also retailers to be visible on these platforms. And the way that these platforms get information that to ultimately recommend your brand is different, than Google. And so what brands need to start to think about is, how do they make sure that they are setting themselves up for success? And so I don't know exactly the article that's being mentioned. And I think what it's really about for brands is, are you thinking about how those tools like ChatGPT get their information? So for example, one of the things that I see is, one of the number one places that a ChatGPT and other LLMs go to for product information is a brand website. Well, many of you know, brand websites are nothing anymore, right? There's not much there because typical consumers, right, don't go to them. But these, AI agents will. And so do you have the right information on your brand page? Are you really addressing consumer barriers? By the way, we're seeing the same AI type agents, shopping assistants appear on, retailer sites like Amazon and others. And so I think that's what's most important as we think about how the consumer path to purchase is changing, and how, as a brand or a retailer, you're showing up in that environment, and what's needed to win in that environment is likely different than what's needed to win in the past.
Excellent, excellent. Kristi, Yogesh, any builds?
No, I think that's perfect. Lauren, if people don't follow Lauren on LinkedIn, she puts out great content. She put,
Yeah,
I think she put out I think, didn't you, I'm pretty sure it was you wrote like a whole
yeah,
thing on this.
yeah.
The
She
other
did
day.
last week, in fact. Yeah,
Um, the what was released this morning that I read was that ChatGPT has now put they have a partnership with a payment platform that allows people to now purchase right through ChatGPT.
Oh, Shopify. Yeah.
So Shopify did the integration with them. So now really you now start to really get your head wrapped around how the tables are turned for Google and
Yeah.
how now people are using, because what we're seeing in consumer usage is that people are using ChatGPT like Google. And that can be okay, but at the same time, it's not, it's the most probable word predictor. So it's not pulling up necessarily web pages. And so it's really interesting to think like, so now if you're a brand, if people are going to ChatGPT and buying off ChatGPT, how are you going to do that? So I think Laura makes a great point as to like, right, humans didn't go to brand websites, but an AI agent will. So I think the general consensus right now is try to put out as much content as you can on your brand that is like a Q&A type content. So a lot of the data in these LLMs have been trained on Reddit because Reddit is a chat type style of like, oh, this, then that, then this, then that. And like, it's showing how the human reasons or works through problems. And thinks through things. And so that's kind of what the content we're going to see more and more brands put out because, like Lauren said, maybe not a human's going to read it, but an agent is, and it's going to go, oh, okay, that's the answer to this. I better get this product in front of the consumer as they're searching here.
Wow, that's pretty crazy to think about.
I know.
Wow, never thought about that. That's awesome. All right, I got a few more questions here. Got a couple more minutes. So Paula asks, this is a good question. How do you navigate, the three of you navigate confidentiality of inputting your own data into the models? How do you handle that?
I think we answered that before, right? If proprietary information is or confidential information, right? You have to kind of like make sure that you've got permission, from your client. If you're a consultant, you should certainly get permission from your client. If you're working internally, your legal team will have probably put some policies out around what you can and cannot do. The third thing you can do, and I've actually done this with my students in my classes, where I was working with a company, a major bottling company, who shall remain unnamed, but I'm pretty sure you figured it out already. They basically gave me masked data. So I couldn't see the name of the retailers. I couldn't see, any of that stuff. But it was just like retailer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They gave us their actual data. And my students actually used that with ChatGPT to go and build out, predictive tools, for example, right? And they came back and they shared the results. The client knew exactly who the retailers were. We didn't, but they knew. So when they were showing the predictions that were happening, they're like, yeah, this makes sense. No, that does not make sense, kind of thing. So, masking the data could be another way for you to kind of like do a workaround if that helps. I'm not suggesting it all for everyone in every situation, but it is an option if you really want to do something. So
Yeah. This is a good one for you, Yogesh, too, in terms of your view of how AI is limiting students or young professionals' capacity to create, or is it evolving them to create their own style, their own skills? So what are the things and ways that you're detecting when a student is using their own brain versus an AI brain, kind of thing?
So this is a very hot topic right now, not just at the university level, but also at the high school level as well, probably even going into the middle school level. And even if you look at what's come out in the last, I want to say 5 days, China announced that they're going to have first graders starting to use AI. The Trump administration actually put out I think an executive order I want to say in the last 72 hours, instructing that, first graders in the US also start getting exposed to AI. So this is happening, whether we like it or not, right? So the question then becomes, oh, by the way, they're already kind of like, these policies that have come out are actually lagging already because the LLMs, whether it's Gemini, OpenAI, you name it, they've already pre-designed this into their systems today already. So students are already using it, right? They're afraid and they're getting penalized. There are court cases happening right now at the high school level and the university level where, professors have accused students of, using it, students are denying it. It's total mess from that perspective. My point of view is very clear. Teach the students how to use, teach them how to be critical, in their approach. Show them how to know that the output that they're getting is actually valid. Just like we as professionals are saying, this is hallucination, this is actually real. We have to teach our kids the same exact thing without them having that experience base that we all have as professionals today. Right. So that's the challenge that's in front of them and us, quite frankly. And we owe it to our kids on how do we get them up to speed on that front, basically. So
Yeah, that's a fascinating topic. And I actually saw an article yesterday. You would think that the younger generation is better able to process and sift through all the information they're seeing, but it was actually the story was that the younger generation actually had more difficulty identifying fakes or making sure what they were reading was valid or trustworthy. So a super important topic. Hey, we've been going 26 minutes into the Q&A and 2/3 of the people are still here, but I think we should wrap up and keep everybody wanting for part 2 with Yogesh on May 14th. So before we wrap, 2 things. First, an enormous thank you to Kristen and Smriti for organizing and to Kristi, Lauren, and Yogesh for sharing the insights. This has been a fabulous session, as evidenced by, we in research rely on facts. Facts are people are staying. That's the biggest testament of them all, with all the things that you have to do. I would like to do a second thing, which is just a quick poll to ask people what future topics they're interested in after the AI session with Yogesh. There are more AI and non-AI topics that we could work into the Insights and Analytics Forum. And then, of course, there's an open-ended question for you to fill in here as well. So if you could just take a second to vote, that would be great. And I'm not going to sing the Jeopardy song. You already had that once. So I think I'll spare you the chorus. But as you're wrapping up and doing this, I would just say this has been a terrific session, and each of you bring great wisdom and insight and tips. I know Kristi had said we typically put the videos on the Insights and Analytics Forum website when they're done. I hadn't had a chance to ask Lauren, Yogesh, if you have any question or comfort with that. Everybody's different on that regard, but we will share what we can share, and at least some of it. And looks like we've got, of course, everybody's voting for 3 or 4 things with high percentages. So we'll have our next meeting, we'll have great stuff to choose from. So if once you've voted, if you want to go ahead and log off, that'd be great. And just thank you to our esteemed panel and co-chairs, and excellent session. Take care, everybody. If you're still logged on, I'm still keeping the poll open for another minute as people type in stuff. Okay, looks like it stopped. Thank you, everybody. If there's anybody who wants to see the results, they are here. See everybody on the 14th.